Hey, everybody, welcome into the latest edition of the unveil of the Warchant Top 40. The Warchant Top 40 is the original preseason countdown of the most impactful players on the Florida State roster. It's voted by the three men here on the screen, myself, Ira Schofel, managing editor of Warchant.com, staff writer Matt Lasser, as well as Gene Williams, Corey Clark, Tom Lang, and Jeff Cameron. All of it was added up into this composite list of players. And we're going to tell you who we all thought, not just the guys here on the screen, but all of us factored in into the picks 26 through 30. Before that, as you see on the screen, hit the thumbs up. That'd be very much appreciated. Also, subscribe. You're going to get a whole bunch of stuff. Matt, how's recruiting been ever since we took over Rivals.com? Are things going through the roof in terms of resources and news?
It is. And when we did the thing with the roundtable with John Garcia last week, I was talking to him about it before, and he said, man, there's just so many more national guys that they're able to do so much more and plan out so much better. So if you want recruiting, this is the place to be.
All right, right on. All right, let's start off with number 30 on the list. Again, this is the composite list. Everybody in Warchant.com, their ballot factored in. Number 30, Daniel Lyons, interior defensive lineman for the Noles. Ira Schofel, I did not have him on my ballot. I did not. You had him at 34 on your ballot. Our guy Matt had him at 33. Use a few minutes here of your time, my friend. Convince me why I'm completely silly for leaving him off my ballot.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, he's not been nearly as productive as maybe we had hoped. I think when he came into Florida State, his first year, the year he redshirted, he showed a lot of promise. And I think we had a lot of excitement just from things we saw from him during some of the pass rushing drills and practice. But it really hasn't translated to him being a major playmaker. He's been part of the rotation for Florida State on the defensive line. I think this spring would have been an opportunity for him to really jump up and maybe jump into that group where we say, oh, this is definitely going to be an impact player for Florida State, maybe in the top 20 or 25. But he got banged up early in camp, missed some time, and so we didn't get to see that. Now, the big question I think about Daniel Lyons is exactly how he fits into this Tony White defense. Tony White, it's usually 3 defensive linemen. Sometimes it's 4 defensive linemen. Sometimes he'll play those bigger defensive tackles or those more athletic defensive tackles as big defensive ends. So we're not sure exactly how he's going to fit into it. So I think in the 30s makes sense for him. 30 probably makes sense for him. He is a veteran. He's going to be leaned upon, but it's hard to predict that he's going to be a major playmaker just based on what we have seen so far.
As usual, you were most likely right on this, Ira. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, well, who else is it going to be then? Because we know Daryl Jackson's one of those guys slated to be on the interior. You mentioned the versatility that Tony White can go with. 29, I've got KJ Samson. I think KJ Samson, I like his upside more than Daniel Lyons is. I've got him on my ballot at 27th. He's 29th on the overall list. Matt, you got him at 31st. What do you, or maybe are you waiting to see about KJ Samson and think what his impact could be for the team this season?
I mean, it's just that he hasn't done much yet, right? But he's clearly, like, when everyone talks about him, they always talk highly of him. He's always one of those guys. I mean, even last year, before last season, Braden Fisk was hyping him up as the next big thing, right? So he's one of those guys that you're looking to kind of break into the rotation this year. And even with Jason Jenkins up in the air, he's probably going to get more reps at the start of the season than we originally thought going in. So, again, he's just one of those guys that I think needs to break into the rotation for Florida State and the defensive line to have a good year. And when he does, again, we've heard so many good things about him that maybe this year's finally his breakthrough year.
Highest on the ballot was Corey, had KJ at 26th. Lowest was Gene, who had him at 36 on his ballot. We go to running back now. Sorry, Ira. I talked to the other guy way too much. You're much more who I'd rather be speaking to on a daily basis. I'm sure he says the same thing about me, though. It's fine. Number 28, let's go offense. Let's go running back, Roydell Williams. I feel like you had really high expectations for Roydell, maybe more so than a lot of us on the panel here and as well as over at warchant.com. I'm guessing maybe some of these additions they also had in the running back room, namely the kid from Oklahoma. And I don't say that in a disrespectful way. I say that kind of in a cool way. Maybe kind of factors into where he falls on the ballot. 28th overall. Gene had him as high as 12th. You had him at 24th. I'm at 31st. Matt had him at 34th, Ira.
Yeah, he's interesting because, you know, and I was talking to somebody on the staff about this not that long ago, not one of the full-time assistant coaches, but somebody on the staff. And they were like, look, man, this guy played a lot at Alabama. You know, we look at last year and say, okay, he didn't really have much of an impact, but he also went down with that injury early in the season and missed the rest of the year. Now, in the window we did see, didn't look great and had that awful fumble early in the season. That was just one of those, it was just a game-changing fumble and a play where it seemed like it should have been a 20-yard gain. Instead, it ended up being a fumble in your own territory. So those plays, I think, have, in the lack of other big plays, have Florida State fans and a lot of the media really skeptical of what he can do. But I would say, again, you think about the fact that Nick Saban recruited him. Nick Saban had him as his starting running back, I think, in the SEC championship game. Now, he didn't put up big numbers, and he was never a prolific running back at Alabama. Ran for about 500 yards his last season there. But he's a guy that played at that level. He should be one of Florida. We saw Florida State football play a year ago. I think there's a good chance he's going to be one of the top 25 players. He may be higher. Gene, at the end of the day, may prove out to be right. But I think, to your point, Gavin Sawchuk coming in, that's going to be a big challenge for Roydell to keep him off the field. Usman Kromah, the way he looks and all the excitement about him, Roydell's going to have a lot of competition. But I would say this: if Gus Malzahn puts Roydell Williams out there early in games, early this season, that means he thinks he's going to be one of their top 20, 25 players, and we may all have him a little bit too low.
We've got these next two guys in a tie, but we're going to go ahead and say 27 and 26. But we do have Landon Thomas checking in here, Ira, and I know that guys like Corey had really high hopes for him as a true freshman. I thought he looked really well in those limited opportunities, especially versus Clemson. You bring in Randy Pittman, kind of maybe makes things a little bit more crowded in that room. But he's a guy that it might be one of the more highest ranked recruits that Mike Norvell has been able to pull in. But I think maybe between that sort of high ceiling and then maybe being the number 2 tight end in a Gus Malzahn offense kind of gives him a weird spot, falling kind of, towards the bottom middle of this list right here. You've got him at 22. I've got him at 30. So does Matt.
I think he's an interesting player because I think he's probably got the most NFL upside, I think, of that tight end room. Just when you look at measurables, I think Randy Pittman's probably a better player right now. He's a year older. He had more experience at UCF. He's been in this offense longer. I think Randy Pittman may end up being the number 1 tight end for the entire season. Landon may not ever beat him out. But I think Landon Thomas has a ton of potential, man. He's got that great frame. Some of the catches you talked about, the Clemson game and some other ones as well, where he can kind of post up defensive players. He's a literal mismatch, physically for a lot of the guys that are going to be trying to cover him, whether it's safeties who are probably too small or linebackers who might be too big, or too slow. So I think he's a big time player. The point you make about he wasn't all that productive last year, I just think we have to throw everything out what happened last year on that offense. I mean, we can't hold anything that happened in that offense in 2024 against any of these players. If this offense is functioning, if Tommy Castellanos finds the tight end, if he becomes the guy that kind of rolls out with him when plays are breaking down, he could end up being a big part of the offense. I still think he's got tons of potential. There's a reason he was the number 1 tight end in the country during part of the recruiting process, and I think that may start to bear out as we move forward.
Yeah, it'd be cool to have one of these kind of homegrown guys end up being a player that they really can rely on. Matt, what do you think about Landon Thomas? The way he can maybe fit into this offense, his skill set, and just where he sits on this list, which, by the way, we're going to say they're both tied for 27, this player and the next one. That's the way math works, Aslan. You just don't say one person's 27, 26 when there's a tie. There's a tie. But your thoughts on Landon Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, he's super athletic, right? Like, that's just what he's always been. He's also a really good blocking tight end. Like, he can pretty much do it all, and that was his thing coming out of high school. And I remember interviewing him, and he actually loves blocking. Like, it's one of his favorite parts of playing football, which is what you want to see for a guy who can be versatile and do a little bit of everything. So maybe you see him come in certain situations where, again, Gus Malzahn is big on whoever's the best post route runner is going to run a post. Whoever's the best wheel route runner is going to run a wheel. So maybe if he's better than Randy Pittman at one route, he'll go in for that. But Gus doesn't really, and we've seen this, Gus doesn't really like to rotate, at least with receivers. They'll put tight end in that too a whole lot. So if Randy Pittman kind of takes that position and runs with it, and as we kind of expect him to be that number 1, it's hard to see Landon kind of getting as many reps as we would hope. It's probably more of a next year thing than he's going to get in rotationally a little bit, but not a whole lot.
All right, and also tied for 26th, That is Omar Graham Jr., everybody. Adam Fuller's favorite linebacker, now the safeties coach for your Los Angeles Chargers, everybody. I had him 16th on my list, Ira Schoenfeld. You know, I went back and looked at PFF. I thought that Omar was more productive, more sound linebacker than Justin Cryer by a noticeable margin, but that turns out to not be the way, or the case, rather, when you look at the numbers on PFF. And I know there were some bad moments in Dublin that really kind of followed Omar throughout last season. But I felt like the second half of the year, he would be where the football was at. I mean, he would find the ball carrier. He seemed to be triggering and shooting the right gaps. Injuries have been really the bugaboo. And when he was healthy, he seemed to be kind of turning things on towards the second half of the season. I think he's one of your three best linebackers. And if you're running a 3-3-5, well, then by virtue of that, I think he should probably be inside of your top 20. We've got him inside the top 30. He is tied again with Landon Thomas at 26th. Matt, you have him at 15th. So we're on the island. We're on Omar Graham Island together, man. What do you like about Omar Graham Jr.?
Well, do you think so? Omar, if you remember the North Carolina game, Omarion Hampton got stopped at the 1 by Omar Graham. Do you think, and Omarion Hampton's now in the Chargers, do you think Adam Fuller gets in his ear about that at all at OTAs or training right now? Like, hey, my guy stopped you. Do you remember that? But yeah, I have Omar as my number 2 linebacker behind Elijah Herring. I just think he's ascended so much over the last year and a half. You got to remember he had a lot of injury troubles too, so I think that played a big part in it. Even Randy Shannon back in the day was very high on him. Everyone was high on him, and then he kept getting hurt. So I think finally, if we get a healthy Omar Graham, we're going to see a lot better and a much improved. And he could end up, with Elijah Herring being on the older side, he could end up being that best linebacker this year, just depending on how the season works out.
Yeah. Well said, Matt. Thanks, man. I'm start having you write my material. Ira, you've got our guy at 25th on the ballot, which comes in kind of close to what the composite was for everybody over at warchant.com. Thoughts on Omar Graham Jr. When we talk about 3 best linebackers, it might be individual sort of skill sets. Maybe his skill set overlaps more with one of these guys that's in front of him that you have a projected. What do you think of? What do you see Omar's role possibly being for this team this season?
You know, I think you summarized it pretty well. You know, I thought as the year went on last season, he got better. And there were games where he was like, okay, he's playing linebacker now. Early in the season, as you mentioned, the Georgia Tech game specifically was a disaster. And I do think it was because he got hurt in training camp and they threw him out there and basically asked him to play injured or hurt, and he played terribly. I think what happens when you're injured sometime at that position specifically is maybe you start guessing, trying to kind of cheat a little bit, trying to predict in your mind what's going to happen. So because you're worried you're not going to physically be able to do it. I think it was an ankle from what I remember. But he's had so many injuries throughout his time at Florida State. The durability is a concern. We've heard so many good things about him in practice. Man, Randy Shannon and Adam Fuller loved him. They still swear to this day that in the camp before the 2023 season, there was a question whether or not he was going to beat out Tatum Bethune or Kalen DeLoach because he was having that great of a camp till he got hurt. People watching this right now want to throw their computers or their phones through a window because they've never seen that Omar Graham. So we'll see if it finally comes to fruition. We also have to see if he can stay healthy. But yeah, I mean, you guys, I see where you're coming from. He may end up being one of those top 3 guys. It wouldn't surprise me if he becomes one of those top 3 guys. I just don't think it's clear cut. I think it wouldn't be a shock if you know, Nicholson or Stephon Thompson's a wild card because we don't know if he's back to the form he showed early in his career at Syracuse or if he's the guy that really couldn't play a whole lot in Nebraska. There's just a lot of wild cards at that position. So it was hard for me to put anybody real high other than Elijah Herring. I think he's the clear-cut guy that's going to be in that top group.
I thought we almost had him, Matt. I thought we were almost pulling another guy onto Omar Graham Jr. Allen, but maybe next year with a different ballot.
Hey, even if I agree, I'm going to defend my picks.
I like
I'm going down with my pick.
So it makes these entertaining. All right, so that's 30 through 26. Next volume of picks will be 21 through 25. Not sure when that's going to drop, but what I do know is that warchant.com's got you covered around the clock. Be sure to tune in Tuesday. I don't know if this is going to drop maybe beforehand in the morning, but Seminole Headlines 1 to 3 o'clock on Tuesdays. The Jeff Cameron Show 1 to 4 o'clock throughout the week. Wake Up Warchant drops some mornings it does not, but warchant.com's there all the time. Matt Lasser and Michael Langston are over on the premium recruiting board, now the recruiting and portal board. There's so much going on over at warchant.com. You were hurt, everybody, last season. I get it. It's time to come back. Football season, less than 50 days away. Let's all get excited together. Thanks for watching this edition of the Warchant Top 40. On behalf of Irish Show fellow Matt Lasser, I'm Aslan Hajavandi. Stay connected to warchant.com.